It made strong telepathic impressions, causing mental bonds with the people around me. This was confusing and overwhelming. I became very excited as an inner voice spoke to me. This was my intuition directly relating to me. It was the most intense experience of my life. I wanted to go back. I saw different space with bright hands of color. I couldn't raise my hands. I tripped so hard. It is a mental mecca, an excellent reference point for all other psychedelics. Those around me looked like alien space insects. I realized they were all a part of it too. Niles received zero point 0.2 milligrams out of kilograms intravenous DMT about a week after Philip's first IM dose. My feelings were similar to those I had for Philip's injection. That is, while the actual day was a landmark, it also seemed like a dry run, a rehearsal for the real thing. It was very likely we would go beyond this dose. On the day of Niles' zero point 0.2 milligrams over kilogram session, I found him lying on the hospital bed in the research center room, underneath his familiar armored sleeping bag. He took this bag with him wherever he traveled, both literally and figuratively. When he would journey on the road or when he would take a psychedelic drug trip. Cindy and I sat on either side of Niles. I gave him a brief preview of what to expect. He nodded for me to begin. Halfway through the injection, Niles said, "Yes, I tasted." Niles turned out to be one of the few volunteers who can taste intravenous DMT as a drug-rich blood rushed through his mouth and tongue on the way to his brain. It was metallic, slightly bitter taste. I thought, this seems fast enough. My notes are sketchy as an effect of this dose of IV DMT on Niles. This may have been due to his taciturn nature, or because neither of us were especially impressed with the intensity of the experience. He did remark, however, that zero point 0.2 milligrams over kilograms was maybe one third to one fourth a full dose. Relatively to his experience smoking DMT, perhaps a little overconfident from how easy these first two sessions, Philip's IM and Niles' IV, have been, I decided to proceed immediately to triple Niles' IV dose from zero point 0.2 to zero point 0.6 milligrams over. My confidence was premature in retrospect. A more conscious move to doubling it to zero point 0.4 milligrams over kilograms would have been more reasonable. Thankfully, I didn't jump to zero point 0.8 milligrams over kilograms, which would have happened had I followed Niles' suggestion that zero point 0.2 was a fourth of a full dose. This morning, both Philip and Niles were going to get zero point 0.6 IV DMT. It was sunny, cold, and windy in Albuquerque that day, and I was glad to be working inside. I entered Niles' room in the research center. He was lying under his sleeping bag, awaiting for the first 6.6 milligrams. Cindy already had placed a small needle into the forearm vein, the portal through which I would inject the DMT solution directly into the blood. She sat on his right side and I sat on his left, where the tubing from the IV dangled off his arm. Phil also was here. He was scheduled to receive the same dose later in the morning if all went well with Niles. He sat at the foot of the bed, curious about what Niles was to experience and ready to provide moral support for all of us. Little did we suspect we need him for physical backup too. Whew. I infused the solution of DMT somewhat more quickly than I did for Niall's previous 0.2 milligrams over kilogram dose. Over 30 seconds rather than a minute, I thought a faster injection might allow for less dilution of the DMT in the bloodstream. Then would generate higher peaks levels of DMT in the blood and therefore the brain. After the brain after an infusion of the drug was complete, Niles said excitedly, "I can taste it. Here it is." Immediately after blurting this out, he began tossing and turning under his sleeping bag. He then sat up with a start, exclaiming, "I'm going to vomit." He gazed at us, certain and stunned and uncertain. Cindy and I looked at each other at the same time, realizing that we had nothing into which he could throw up. We hadn't foreseen that our test subjects might need to vomit, he mumbled. But I didn't have any breakfast, so there's nothing to throw up. Niles became agitated and pulled the pillow and sleeping bag over his face. He curled into a fetal position, away from us and the blood.